Salamat for the courtesy. Thank you. Again, I have a prepared speech, but it's a one-page, just as a greeting to Lani, rather than really read the statement prepared by my office. I do not know the guy, but maybe I'll just read the ultimate paragraph. That would, just from my heart, sincerely, I wish you a very happy birthday and Merry Christmas to you all in a few days. Now, let me just, there are so many events that's touching our lives today. I just came from a ship called Saif from Pakistan. And Pakistan is a nuclear country. And I was talking to the ship captain. And he was also worried how dangerous it is now to travel. He appears to be, a little bit worried if he's cruising around Asia and maybe beyond, and suddenly things go wrong. And the problem is really my father, who was also a politician many years ago, my late father, and all of them, they had serious problems in their lives for their generation. They had the Second World War. It was not really as virulent as now, even if no shots are fired for the time being. But we were discussing not even the consequences, but the result of how things would be if something goes wrong. And he was the first one said, being a nuclear country, we also have those weapons, but he dreads to dream, even to think about what's happening now in the Korean Peninsula. At no other time I can remember, I'm post-war baby. We have had the Hukbalhabs and all of those uprisings in the past, but it is not. It is really different now, and it is not even an army contending another, but two persons running the show before us. And I'll just pray to God that He will keep this planet Earth safe for us, because if the shooting starts, it's not be bullets, it will be nuclear warheads, and it will, according to the ship captain, it will destroy everything and melt every plant that we have in this area where the fallout is always present, not a possibility. If it explodes in nuclear, it would be a Holocaust. And so I was asking Secretary Cayetano and the chief executive, have we discussed this thing amongst us in government? Frankly, no. Maybe we take it for granted that things would just turn out all right. But as to preparedness, well, of course, we have the disasters and all of these things. But a nuclear explosion, multiple, is something which you and I and God can really maybe pray that it will not happen. We beg the Lord God that He takes care of this problem by Himself, because it appears to be two contenders that cannot understand each other and cannot even measure what would really happen. The fact that America is recalling all Americans to go home is something which is not really good. It does not signal anything, but something must be afoot. There can be no real limited war. And I hope that the only country that can really prevent this from happening is not America, is not the Asian countries, ASEAN. It's all China, Your Excellency. I think the greatest country in the world today in terms of influence and all, and the fact that not really hold sway over Kim Jong-un, but rather the influence of how we can prevent the war. Honestly, Your Excellency, I beg your indulgence, but it behooves upon China to prevent this war because it will cost us everything, including China. So that's the worry of today. Now, locally, I have yet to meet the military and the police. I think day after tomorrow, I've called for an urgent and immediate conference so that we can discuss. And I'm going to ask them, what are we going to do if this thing happens? Try to imagine a nuclear explosions, multiple, and the fallout all over the place. I hope it will not include the other countries. And maybe, Your Excellency, China must really prevent it at all costs. For otherwise, your country will be drawn into the vortex of the violent explosions, and nobody wins in that. We all lose. And so it behooves really on your country to prevent it at all costs. We would be happy to see China really doing its the impossible dream of keeping the peace. I hope President Trump also realizes the posturing does not help. Frankly, sending an armada there is something which all the more adds to the worry of the world. So, again, it is the duty of the Americans, Congress. There is more impersonal than, but they can also lean on, put its way to discuss this in a very judicial and only thinking of the preservation of mankind. Locally, I go back again to my basic promises. I never made more than 4, and I said corruption, and corruption will stop. And I'd like you to know that I asked somebody there in government to make a very serious study. And again, I'm not pointing at anybody. Corruption in the local level is also very huge, a burden actually to the Republic, especially in Mindanao. Now I said the extension of martial law is not really for me or for anybody. It's for the nation. Want to preserve the nation as one. My oath of office says that I protect the people and preserve the Republic of the Philippines. The opportunity to move fast and decisively is bolstered by the declaration of martial law, which was supported by Congress. I'd like to thank the Congress for doing it. It's not really for political purposes. There is no sense in winning your vote somewhere by martial law. Rather, you lose it, the appeal of the people for you to seek a peaceful solution of everything. But we need martial law to move because in Mindanao, one is that I am not, it's no predilection, but I do not really want to have any elections there unless we have destroyed the warlords. For as long as the warlords are there, and the money keeps coming in by way of everything, IRA or whatever, it goes to corruption. In other places, maybe a few cities or provinces in the province of the island of Luzon and maybe in the Visayas. But it is a virulent thing that's happening in Mindanao. That's why it has not progressed. Mindanao remains to be poor, and the highest incidence of malnutrition is there. But if you look at the documents, the papers are there, it's complete on paper. But actually, you need just to go there, ocular observation, and see that they're all in paper sometimes only. So if it's going to be a thing like, I will have everybody there audited. And for the mayors and municipal and governors there involved in corruption, I will just have to suspend them and maybe outright just remove them from office. Administratively, I can cause the removal of any elected official because we have to stop corruption. In my department, I don't mess up with the other branches of government. You have the executive, judicial, and legislative. Wala akong pakialam dyan. And mind you, the complaint about Sereno and the ombudsman that I had a hand in this. You can ask any senator, anybody, any cabinet member who's still alive, to tell you I never interfered in anything. I never talked to anybody, to any called or whatever, any congressman about impeachment. I was just there to comment publicly because I am asked sometimes by media and the people interested. And because I am just a worker of government, I have to answer questions. But this thing about filing charges against your opponents politically or those who were not with you, I have told you before, it ain't in my system. And it's not my habit to go after politicians. Otherwise, even my perennial opponent in Davao City would have been killed a long time ago. But I did not. I just said that out of exasperation, I said, you guys, if I'll say you in public, I'll shoot you. But that's all talk, actually. Nobody makes a threat and do it, actually, unless I am prepared to go to prison. And everybody's waiting for me there, you know. All the drug lords and all of these SOBs are, yeah. So corruption will remain to the very last day. And I address myself also to the human rights and all. That's the second promise, that I will get rid of this. It's killing the Filipinos. We estimate about 5 million. 5 million reduced to slavery, to a chemical. That's, you know, every time the monkey rides on the back of an addict, and if he has no money, he has to get it from any source. And that is why if you just show your, you know, these are the persons that Duterte killed. Really? When? Where? How? And you shoot it to the, you know, everybody in the international community. It's all numbers. 10,000, sometimes 7,000. The police says they've killed about 3,000. But I had to it's a scourge. But they don't bother. They go to outside on brand this, and they copy, and they distribute. So then they come here and say, Duterte, it is not a crime. It is just an health issue. It's a social problem. David, if you're talking the truth, then why don't you look on the other side? If it's social problem, what happened? How did it happen? Why was it there that there are so many millions already addicted to the drug? The problem is the United Nations, there are two organs there, the Human Rights Commission International and the World Health Organization. Under it, this is the Narcotics Control Board. This shabu is the most toxic because it shrinks the brain and the addict would have bizarre, violent, aggressive behavior. And if you read all of those things there, there's nothing to do with cocaine. Cocaine, you just sleep forever. That's why so many actors there in America, they just do it. They just eat it all the way until they die. So, and it's another addict. The worst is stupor. But unlike drugs, you see so many killings of families, children. Yesterday, mother and daughter. And you think it's just an ordinary crime. Is it really the practice of criminals in our time, in our youth, to see people killing one family infant sa Bulacan, killing the blind wife, then the daughter-in-law, then the 14-year-old girl, and pati yung 1-year-old, pakialaman pa. Well, I am not trying to appear to be a hero before the international, gathering. But, when I was in Davao, I was a prosecutor. I suffered sorrow and agony every time my case fails because the police have been bribed. The judge received money. When I present the supposed evidence, I didn't know that I was holding already an alum, tawas. They called it tawas. It's an alum. It is really like shabu. And when the lawyer would say, I'd like to have a re-examination of the forensics, you can get it that, something was cooked. And so, surely it comes out an alum. Itawas in the native tongue. And it's the one that's used for the girls and making them whiter. I do not know why. But the Filipinas, the brown ones, are the most beautiful women in the world, and they have to want to appear white. There's a saying, if you want to destroy your enemy, you just paint him dark, and he would appear very white. I'm just telling the Filipinos, why do you have to do that? So, but again, that's for the corruption. I have had my faults, plenty, but money was not really. You guys from Davao City, you have businesses there. What must I order? 3 days permits. Do not follow up you go into the business there, file it, and it will just come out without any bribe. Look at Davao now. It's in Mindanao. It's a very disturbed island. But look around Davao, go there and walk out, thereabout in even on the wee hours of the morning. Why? If there is one thing actually that is terribly wrong in the minds, if you care to know, so that I'm addressing myself to the members of the diplomatic law. If there is one thing that is absent totally now, is the fear of sanctions. This fear of accountability that you did something wrong and you must have to pay for it. Our criminal code, we got it from Spain. But our procedure, the criminal procedure of how to present evidence and all, the trial, the proceedings, is controlled by the criminal procedure, which we copied from the Americans. But the substantive law, the definition of crime, and so this is, well, it contributed to a lot of to the quagmire. But, you know, the average person there, the criminal, has no sense of accountability, and even the new generation. Hindi sila takot eh. There is no fear of breaking the law. Why? I do not want to mention it publicly, but I am forced to. But you know, if he runs again for senator, I will vote for him. He's good, but he feels short of his duty. You know, Senator Pangilinan, sir, hindi kayo kasali dyan. Copied the youth offender laws of the other land. And from below 12, below 9, which has no criminal liability at all, but 9 below 12, you see if there is malice. If it's just a hunger that drives a child, of course, it's not a crime. But, you know, acts of lasciviousness and all of those things. There are crimes can be committed by the youth that have malice or has malice in it. Then above 12 but below 16, the law of indeterminate sentence law. So the judge can take all factors, whether to send him to jail or not. But that is a correctional facility. Pangilinan changed the law to below 15 below. No accountability at all, irrespective of the crime. And you can ask the mayors and the police. You cannot even touch a child now because the policeman, the law enforcer, will go to jail. So they grew up, this generation of about, when was the law? It's about 14. These are the children that you see on TV, snatching everything, and then running. And I'm sure they are caught actually after that, because they are identified with in EDSA. But you know, the moment they say that they are minors, the police don't bother even to write a single sentence in the blotter. A single word of the incident, nothing. It's actually expugning everything. And there is no intervention after the arrest. That is the problem. So people grew up without the fear of going to jail because they have been in and out every day of their lives. That's the problem. They are not afraid to go to jail because they grow up with this paradigm that it's good to commit wrong. There's not even 1 minute after the arrest of the child, just to make a sense, make him understand of the sense of accountability to society. Wala. The moment the child would say, and they have their own birth certificates laminated, and if they show it to the police, The police would just let him go. He committed what? Rape with homicide? No problem. You're a child. Rape with robbery? No problem. That is the practice. You ask any policeman outside of this building. You can even ask the child to demonstrate, you kill him and see what will happen. You can experiment with it. So there is no fear of that. That is why we have a problem of criminality. And me, I hate drugs because I said, you reduce my countrymen like animals. When the monkey rides on the back and he begins to skirn, he has to have the money. And then when the brink sinks, you know, heroin, cannabis, cocaine, they are not so destructive of the brain because they come from a organic plant called the poppy. They are just the derivatives. And, you know, you can always have but in Shabu, even if you build, I have the biggest rehab with a number of about 10,000 rooms, no takers. Why? And there's a complaint that this should be near in the community-based treatment. They will manage to get the substance. That is precisely the reason in penal institutions, you are removed from your community for 1 year, 2 years. That is part of your rehabilitation to make you realize. But shabu, when it shrinks the brain stays strong. And the average rate of going back is in 1 to 10, 8 will go back. You'd have a miracle if 2 of them will ever go back to their senses again. That is I know because I've been mayor for 23 years, and I was a prosecutor in court. And the mayor is the #1 law enforcer in his community or city, chartered or a municipal component of the province. That's the problem. After this impasse now, we have our own problems also. The third is I have decided to sever our talks with the communists because you cannot understand what they want. I said, I'll take care of corruption, drugs, then I will improve the economy. And I was made the laughing stock because I said, I do not know about economics. Simply because I hate the subject, period. But I can be good when I want to. If you talk into my field, if you want a good trial lawyer, I'm one and I can defend you. I'm not assuring you of acquittal, but I can defend you because I've been doing trial work for almost 9 years before I became city mayor. But in other fields, I get the Sonny Dominguez. He's my childhood chum. We're neighbors. He was a consistent valedictorian since kindergarten up to where? Colombia. Me, I graduated. That's why my daughter was complaining, Papa, why don't you tell your Secretary Brunes, what is this K-12? 12 years. Because don't start complaining there because your father started K-12 many, many years ago. I stayed in high school for 7 years. All of them were already professionals, married. Sonny was already hitting it big. I was still studying. I'm a latecomer, and all of them are really very good. Secretary Mijaldia is a son of a justice. He knows his law. His father, justice, member of the Supreme Court of the Republic of the Philippines. Tugade, do not worry about corruption. Tugade is a billionaire. Even before being a lawyer, he was our classmate. He was our valedictorian. And Lorenzana, my defense secretary, is a valedictorian. All of them in the cabinet sitting there are almost either valedictorian or salutatorians. Me, meager, my not so colorful. But what is tragic is that all of them, or valedictorians, or salutatorians, are just my workers today. That is the irony of life. With these communists, I have decided to cut ties. I used to be friends with them. For the simple reason that there is now talks between the government and their group in Norway, in Oslo. And I was supplied with the official proceedings every day of the talks, official. But in their workshops, and then I was reading it, and I added it just like in arithmetic. The sum total of what they are asking is a share of the sovereignty, like a coalition government. That is not possible. I said, if that is what you're up to, I'm sorry. So you'll just have to fight it out. I was listening to Season, the #1 communist, when I was a student. And 50 years hence, we are still fighting. I hated it. And I wanted to talk to them. But if at the end of the day you want sovereignty, I'm sorry. Because in this country, I said, people were given the sacred duty of taking care of the sovereignty of the country, are elected by the people. And if you choose a son of a bitch, if he is what the people want, cannot do anything. Either the military will just, if you are so incompetent, but I said you're a son of a bitch, then it's up to the military and the police to decide whether to dispose of you. But you have to honor the will of the people. And simply the communists in any elections, they all lost. In my city, they won council seats only because they were in my ticket. So when we separated, they ended up at nada. Nada. And they asked for a coalition government. I said, I cannot give you what I do not own. Because sovereignty is exercised by people who are elected. I cannot share that power with you. I can share it with Congress and Supreme Court because they are the official organs of government. But for you to tinker with these proceedings, I'm sorry. With the MNLF in Mindanao, I'm not talking about the secessionist movements. They have a valid reason. In 1521, Magellan landed in Leyte, Visayas. But about 70, they say 100. When I went to Malaysia to read it, the archives, I would place it at about 60, 70. They were ahead in Mindanao, the evangelism of Islam. So when Magellan brought Christianity, Mindanao at the time was already Islam. And when you force a religion on the people, during the Americans, the Spaniards, and even now, because there is a rallying point there, Islam. So that's why we have to talk, because MIMN are in the mainstream. They do not want violence. They want to be a part of this country. But only if we can concede something Because when the Spaniards came and the Americans came, Mindanao was subdivided into so many, just like the Middle East. It's divided by France, Britain, America, Italy, and Germany. Mindanao is like that. It was invaded, subjugated for 400 years, all of us, including the Visayas. And because for the first time, there was no gunpowder, it was totally alien to us. And it can fire and kill a person at a distance without you going near him. Naturally, the one and subjugated, and included actually when you invade the country, India, be it Pakistan, be it Malaysia, Indonesia, be it in the Middle East, you suffer oppression. And that's a problem. Because in Mindanao, the fundamentalists think that this government is an extension of the government of America, which was foisted, and the government created by Spain, and it is a continuing one. And it says every president would always be a Christian. It is not a religious thing. It never has been. It is not now. I'd like to tell everybody that whether you like it or not, if you hate federalism, fine. But you have to have something for them. Because they were deprived. They were the original Adam and Eve there. So if you are a Christian or speaking a dialect, not the Maguindanao, the Maranao, Iranon, the Tausug, Sama, then you are not an original there. That is for sure. You are like me. Well, of course, me, it was my father from Cebu. But my father married a daughter of a Muslim lady. My grandfather was Chinese Lam. So I would know how the dynamics of Mindanao works. The thing is, we have also to, pardon me for taking of your time, but it is something which you must know, so that you can understand the Filipino psychology. If trouble breaks there, and the MI, who is still in the mainstream, and MNLF, Nur Miswari, he's holding his cards close to his heart. I cannot even fathom until now what he really wants. But one thing, he's tired of fighting. We must have these agreements, and the rest of the nation must understand that there has to be a reconfiguring of the territories. If they do not want to, if you do not want to change the structure from unitary, which is the president, even the travels of a miracle clerk, you have to get a permit from me. It's just a very odious. It's really unitary and almost. I cannot understand why, but that is really how constricted a unitary system works. But if you want to maintain it, fine with me, but we must agree that there has something has to give. If not, there is war, then my enemy is his friends. And therefore, you open up wide the floodgates of the entry of terrorism. ISIS would be here again, especially if the two mainstream political entities would go against government. And the ISIS, they have lost the mass base there. They don't have a piece of real estate to control, no more business. They will come in droves and fight in the name of Allah. I do not have a problem. I said I come from, my ancestry is, I'm mixed, but never before I have seen such a brutal ideology. It's almost bankrupt. It has no sense of purpose, and it only wants to kill and destroy. And that is the problem for all nations now. And the way how we responded must be left to the nation concerned. Because after all, the bomb that exploded in Paris, New York, is the same bomb here. But the problem is we do not have enough resources to control them. We are always eternally short of funds. We do not have the sophisticated, well, there are friends of the Philippines, I cannot mention it here publicly, who are helping us, who help us in Marawi. Well, for one country, I can tell you, America was also there, helping us with the intelligence data. But that's about it. And we lost so many lives there. And I grieve for the Moro, the innocent ones who were drawn into the conflict for nothing, for no reason at all. And I grieve for the Christians. I'm a little bit somebody who can hold this equanimity in face of, here's a tribe here, which is a Moro, a Muslim, and the Christian. But if there is one thing to get rid of, it's really the warlords, the politicians who continually plunder the country and terrorism. That's about my message to you. I did it on purpose, but to give meaning to the sweat of the guy who wrote my speech. Lana's birthday, and there is no poignant message for everybody. So I was forced to, so that she's a mayor, she will be aware of the things that can happen anytime. Actually, I'm just waiting for the call. And I've been telling you. Let me pose this question. If terrorism will attack 3 to 4, 5 cities in the Philippines simultaneously, can we handle it? Can we really respond responsibly? I will be asking that thing to the military a day after tomorrow. What's your plan about Korea? If there is so much destruction and the fallout is already there, what are we supposed to do? How do we control hunger and insanity all around? It's just near, Beijing is just about 4 hours away. The wind currents goes down to the tropics. You can see the graph. It's all, and also about, how about Europe? You'd be forced to use your nuclear assets to help the peace. Well, what peace are you helping when everything blows up? And Russia will be drawn into the conflict, whether Putin likes it or not. And China has to do something. You say, if you send me a missile, I have to use my missile too, because the thing here is we must turn each other that it's a mutual destruction. And if it is to the liking of mankind to end civilization, fine. But it's going to happen. One false move, one miscalculation of a general there, or suddenly Kim Il-jong, I don't know what's inside this, the gray matter between the ears. But I really do not know. Your guess is as good as mine. But me, if the thing happens, I would ask everybody to go to the mosque. Me, I go to my favorite church and maybe make the last confessions. What are your sins? And I would ask the priest, from childhood or until now, or the most recent sins. You might not like it, but you have to give me the blessing because everybody loses. Thank you, Lani. Happy birthday.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your inspiring words.